All right, everyone, get ready because today we are diving deep into the world of
The
finfluencers.
influencers, right?
Yeah, those financial influencers who are just everywhere on social media these days. And we're going to uncover the risks they can pose for companies, especially the ones working with them,
Yeah, absolutely.
and how to navigate this whole new world safely.
Yeah, it's an interesting landscape.
Yeah. We always hear about the dangers of finfluencers for like individual investors.
Right.
Like, should you be taking advice? But what about for the companies?
Yeah, for the businesses that are working with them.
That's what we're going to unpack today.
Yeah, for sure. It's a fascinating area, and honestly, it feels like the Wild West out there right now.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone's trying to grab a piece of this because the potential is huge, right?
Yeah.
Massive reach, engaged audiences. They have that sort of air of authenticity that traditional advertising just can't replicate.
Exactly.
But for companies, it's a high-stakes game.
Uh,
And there are a lot of risks,
yeah.
a unique set of risks that a lot of them might not even realize they're signing up for.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start digging into these risks.
Okay.
Our source today really highlights reputation.
Okay.
Reputational damage is a major concern.
For sure.
And I mean, it makes sense, right? Like if a finfluencer who's promoting your product gets caught up in some scandal, it's your brand that gets splashed with the mud too.
Yeah, absolutely. I get guilt by association, right?
Yeah.
One case study that really stood out to me from the research involved this popular investing app.
Okay.
They partnered with this charismatic finfluencer who had built up this huge following by promoting, risky options trading
Oh,
strategies.
this trading? Okay.
Yeah, super risky, right? Everything was going great, market's up, everyone's making money until, the market takes a downturn. And a lot of his followers, many of them were, young and inexperienced investors, they lost significant amounts of money.
Ouch.
Yeah.
So even if the company wasn't directly responsible for the investment losses, their reputation takes a hit just by association.
Exactly. The backlash was swift and brutal.
Oh.
People accused the company of being complicit in, promoting this reckless behavior. There were calls for boycotts, investigations, their stock price plummeted,
Oh, wow.
and they faced this real uphill battle to regain public trust. It's a stark reminder that a finfluencer's actions can have a ripple effect that extends far beyond their own personal brand.
That is such a good example. Like, it's not even about avoiding, obviously shady finfluencers. It's like even someone with, seemingly sound advice
Right.
can still pose a risk. And, our source also talks about how attempts to hide paid sponsorships can backfire spectacularly.
For sure, yeah. Transparency is absolutely paramount.
Yeah.
I mean, people, they value authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
And if they discover that a company's been trying to pull the wool over their eyes, by disguising sponsored content as like a genuine endorsement,
Yep.
the damage can be even greater than any potential scandal.
Yeah, wow.
It's a breach of trust that's incredibly difficult to repair.
Okay, so we've covered reputational landmines.
Okay.
Now let's get into, the legal maze.
Okay.
Surrounding all of this, I'm guessing this is where things can get really complicated.
You're not wrong. The thing about this is this legal landscape, it's still evolving.
Oh, really?
And it varies wildly depending on the jurisdiction
Okay.
and the specific financial products or services that they're promoting. But the overarching principle is this. Companies can be held liable for an influencer's misleading or unlawful statements,
Okay.
especially if there's a contract in place.
So it's not as simple as slapping a disclaimer on a post and calling it a day.
Oh, not even close. Like the FTC, for example, has very specific guidelines
Uh-huh.
about influencer marketing requiring, clear and conspicuous disclosures
Okay.
of any material connection between, the endorser and the brand. And failing to comply with these regulations, I mean, you're talking hefty fines,
Yeah.
legal headaches.
So what does that mean for the companies working with these finfluencers?
Okay.
What are some of the crucial steps they need to take?
Well, first and foremost, they need to make sure that, the finfluencers they're partnering with are properly licensed or registered
Okay.
if they're offering financial advice
Gotcha.
or promoting regulated products,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't just have anyone doing this.
Yeah.
It's also essential to have, really robust contracts.
Okay.
That clearly outline the influencer's responsibilities, content guidelines, disclosure requirements, and perhaps most importantly, they need to implement systems for monitoring and reviewing the influencer's content to ensure compliance.
Okay. Got it. So we've talked about reputation, legal risks,
Okay.
but let's not forget about like the potential financial fallout for the companies. I mean,
Yeah.
like what happens if you follow a Finfluencer's advice and things just go south? Can you hold the company accountable?
That's where things get really interesting from a legal perspective.
Okay.
Because while it's generally difficult to hold a company directly liable for investment losses based solely on, an influencer's recommendation, the potential for negative publicity,
Right.
lawsuits,
Yeah.
even regulatory scrutiny, very real.
Okay. Yeah, that's scary.
So even if a company isn't legally at fault, they could still suffer financially.
Yeah, that's a scary thought for these companies investing in this kind of marketing.
Absolutely. I mean, imagine a scenario
Mm-hmm.
where a finfluencer is promoting this like high-risk investment strategy, right?
Okay.
And it leads to big losses for their followers.
Yeah.
Even if the company wasn't directly involved in, crafting that advice, consumers,
Yeah.
they might still blame them, right?
Yeah.
For amplifying that message.
Yeah.
And that could lead to, boycotts,
Okay.
negative reviews,
Yeah.
a decline in trust. In today's world, bad news, it travels fast. And a damaged reputation, that can be incredibly costly to repair.
That's true.
It's a risk that companies need to weigh very carefully when considering finfluencer partnerships.
Yeah, totally. It's like that ripple effect
Right.
where the actions of one person
Exactly.
can impact this whole network of stakeholders.
Totally.
It's definitely making me think twice about taking financial advice from anyone on social media,
Right.
no matter how many followers they have. But, it's not all doom and gloom, right? I mean, our source also talks about ways to mitigate these risks.
Right. Yeah. You're absolutely right. I mean, while finfluencer partnerships, they definitely come with their fair share of potential pitfalls.
Yeah.
There are strategies companies can implement to navigate this landscape more safely and effectively.
Okay, great.
That's all about being proactive,
Uh-huh.
strategic,
Okay.
and, above all, incredibly thorough.
Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
Talk about these strategies. What's the first line of defense for these companies?
The absolute cornerstone
Yeah.
of any successful finfluencer partnership is due diligence.
Due diligence.
And I'm not talking about like a quick Google search,
Okay.
glancing at their follower count.
Yeah.
This is about deep diving into their history,
Okay.
their content, their audience, their values,
Yeah.
everything.
So it's not just about finding someone with a big audience.
Right.
It's about finding the right fit for your brand.
Totally.
But how do you actually do that, in-depth research?
Okay.
What are some things that they should look out for?
Well, you want to start by meticulously combing through their past content.
Okay.
Okay, are there any inconsistencies in their messaging?
Okay.
Have they promoted, risky or controversial products or services in the past?
Oh, yeah.
Have they been involved in any scandals?
Yeah.
Controversy? These are all red flags that should give you pause.
Okay. Yeah. And it's almost like,
Yeah,
hiring a new employee, right? You're looking for someone
you got it.
who's not only qualified,
Yes.
but also a good fit.
You want to make sure that their values align with yours.
Yeah.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And just like you wouldn't hire someone without checking their references,
Yeah.
you shouldn't partner with a finfluencer without thoroughly vetting their online presence.
Makes sense.
And don't just rely on what they present publicly.
Right. Yeah.
Dig deeper.
Yeah.
Look for independent reviews, forum discussions, anything that can give you a more well-rounded picture of their reputation and their track record.
Yeah. Okay. So due diligence is crucial.
Yes.
What else should these companies be thinking about?
The next step is to create, what we call ironclad contracts.
Okay.
And this is where having a good legal team is absolutely essential.
Okay.
The contract needs to be incredibly detailed. It needs to outline everything. Content guidelines, approval processes, disclosure requirements, compensation structures.
So no more hiding those sponsored posts.
No. Transparency is key. Consumers have a right to know when they're being marketed to.
Uh-huh.
And attempting to, disguise sponsored content as organic endorsements,
Yeah.
that's a surefire way to erode trust and damage your brand.
Yeah.
The contract should clearly state how that sponsored content will be labeled, disclosed, ensuring compliance with all relevant advertising regulations.
Okay. So it sounds like there's a lot to consider, right?
Right.
What about content control?
Here.
How much say should a company have over what a finfluencer posts?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's one of the trickiest aspects of these partnerships.
Yeah.
You want to give influencers creative freedom, right?
Right.
But you also need to protect your brand
Ah.
and ensure that their content aligns with your values and your messaging.
Yeah, it's like that balancing act.
It is. It's a balancing act between giving them autonomy,
Yeah.
but maintaining some level of control.
Yeah. Okay.
The contract should clearly outline content guidelines and approval processes. This might involve requiring the influencer to, submit content for review
Okay.
before publishing, establishing clear boundaries around certain topics or language,
Right.
and defining consequences for violating the agreement.
Yeah.
It's also crucial to remember that an influencer's personal actions and opinions
Right.
can reflect on your brand,
Yeah. Okay.
even if they're not explicitly representing you at that moment.
So even if they're not posting about your product,
Right.
directly a controversial tweet,
Exactly.
something like that could still damage your brand by association.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why it's essential to choose your partners carefully
Yeah.
and to have, open and honest communication throughout the relationship. It's about finding influencers whose values align with yours, who you trust to represent your brand responsibly,
Okay.
both online and offline.
This is all really insightful. It sounds like navigating the world of influencers is like walking a tightrope.
It is. There's potential for great rewards, but also significant risks if you're not careful. You
Exactly.
hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
It's a high-stakes game that requires a strategic and cautious approach.
Uh-huh.
But the good news is, with careful planning, thorough research, a solid legal framework,
Yeah.
companies can mitigate these risks and harness the power of influencers to reach new audiences and achieve their marketing goals.
Okay, so we've covered due diligence,
Okay.
contracts,
Contracts.
content control.
Yes.
What other strategies should these companies be thinking about?
One crucial approach is diversification.
Diversification, okay.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket
Okay.
by relying solely on Finfluencers
That-
for your marketing efforts.
So what does that mean?
Explore other avenues,
Okay.
like traditional advertising,
Okay.
content marketing, social media marketing, public relations, right?
Right.
To create like a more well-rounded
Okay.
and resilient strategy.
So spreading your risk across different channels can kind of protect you if like one campaign goes bad or something.
Precisely. It's also important to remember that consumer education plays a vital role in mitigating the risks associated with Finfluencers.
Consumer education.
Yeah, consumer education.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Companies have a responsibility
Okay.
to promote financial literacy
Okay.
and encourage consumers to make informed decisions. By providing educational resources, highlighting the importance of independent research, emphasizing the risks
Yeah.
associated with certain financial products or strategies, companies can empower consumers to be more discerning,
Okay.
less susceptible to potentially misleading or harmful advice.
So it's not just about protecting your brand.
Right.
It's about contributing to like a more informed and responsible financial ecosystem.
Exactly. It's about building trust,
Yeah.
fostering a culture of financial literacy.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, and it's clear that partnering with Finfluencers comes with a whole host of like potential challenges. But as we've discussed, there are also ways to mitigate these risks
Yeah.
and harness the power of these influencers effectively. But before we move on to some specific examples and case studies, I want to pause here and get your take on something.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Knowing what you now know about the complexities and potential pitfalls of all this, what advice would you give to companies like venturing into this space? What's the one thing that absolutely need to keep in mind?
Oh, that's a great question. That's a great question. I think the most crucial piece of advice I can give is to approach Finfluencer partnerships with a healthy dose of caution,
Okay.
and a deep understanding of the risks involved.
Yeah.
This isn't a magic bullet for marketing success.
Right.
And it's certainly not for the faint of heart.
I like that. Not for the faint of heart. It sounds like you really need to be prepared to do your homework.
Yes.
Be strategic
Yep.
about every aspect of this partnership.
It's tempting to get swept up in the hype and the allure of, massive reach and engagement.
Right.
But companies need to remember that Finfluencers are ultimately independent actors
Yeah.
with their own motivations, their own values, and, let's face it, their own potential for unpredictability.
Yeah, so you're saying companies shouldn't just blindly trust an influencer's reputation or follower count.
Absolutely not. Those can be very misleading indicators of trustworthiness or effectiveness.
Okay.
A large following doesn't necessarily translate into a loyal or engaged audience,
Right.
and a polished online persona can easily mask potential red flags or past controversies.
Yeah, it sounds like thorough due diligence is more crucial than ever.
Without a doubt, companies need to dig deep, go beyond those surface-level impressions, and really understand who they're getting into bed with.
Yeah.
It's about scrutinizing their past content, analyzing their audience demographics, evaluating their alignment with your brand values, and crucially, assessing their overall trustworthiness and credibility.
It's almost like, you know, conducting a background check on a potential business partner.
That's a great way to think about it.
Yeah.
And just like in any business partnership,
Yeah.
clear communication and a shared understanding of expectations are paramount.
Right.
The contract should be meticulously crafted to protect both parties
Okay.
and to ensure that everyone is on the same page when it comes to content guidelines, disclosure requirements, and performance metrics.
So it's not just about finding the right influencer. It's about establishing a solid foundation
Yes.
for a successful and mutually beneficial partnership. And, you know, it's interesting because this all ties back to like the broader theme of how trust and authority are evolving
Yeah.
in the digital age.
Right.
You know, it's not just about relying on like traditional institutions or credentials anymore.
Exactly. The internet has democratized access to information and influence.
Yeah.
For better or worse.
Yeah.
Anyone with a smartphone and a charismatic personality can potentially build a following
Right.
and become an authority figure in their niche.
Yeah. Which makes it, you know, even more challenging for consumers to discern who to trust and whose advice to follow.
Right.
There's so much noise out there.
There is.
And it's so easy to get caught up in the hype or the emotional appeal of a persuasive influencer.
It is. That's why it's more important than ever to develop critical thinking skills
Yeah.
and to be like skeptical consumers of information,
Right.
especially when it comes to financial advice.
Yeah.
Don't blindly follow someone just because they have a lot of followers or seem to be living a glamorous lifestyle.
Yeah. Okay.
Do your own research.
Uh-huh.
Question their motivations.
Mm-hmm.
And, if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah. It's almost like we need to develop like a built-in BS detector for the internet.
Right.
But how do we do that? Especially for those who might not be, you know, as familiar with the intricacies of finance or investing.
That's where financial literacy and education come in.
Right.
And I think companies have a role to play here as well.
Okay.
It's not just about promoting their products or services. It's about empowering consumers with the knowledge and tools
Right.
that they need to make informed decisions.
So it's about striking a balance
Yeah.
between leveraging the power of finfluencers
Yes.
and also equipping consumers
These are
to be more discerning and critical
Yes.
of the information they're consuming.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's about fostering a culture of responsible financial decision-making.
Okay.
And I think the best finfluencers, the ones who are truly adding value,
Yeah.
are the ones who are transparent about their motivations, who prioritize education and empowerment,
Yeah.
and who encourage their followers to think critically and do their own research.
It's about building trust
Yes,
through transparency and authenticity.
exactly.
And I think that applies to companies as well.
Yeah.
Those who are upfront about their relationships.
Absolutely.
With influencers who are transparent about their marketing practices and who genuinely prioritize consumer education
Yes,
are more likely to earn the trust and
Yes.
loyalty of their audience.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
Authenticity and transparency are key ingredients in building a sustainable and successful brand in today's world.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about, you know, the risks, the
Yeah.
regulations, the ethical considerations surrounding finfluencers. But I'm curious, what are some of the like more subtle or unexpected ways that finfluencer marketing can impact a company's operations
Okay.
or even its internal culture?
That's a fascinating question.
Mhm.
One area that often gets overlooked is the potential impact on employee morale and perception.
Okay.
Imagine you work for a company that's investing heavily in influencer marketing.
Right.
But internally, there's this sense that these influencers don't really represent the company's values.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or that they're promoting products or services that employees don't believe in.
That could definitely create a disconnect, right? Like
Yeah.
almost a sense of hypocrisy.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like the company is saying one thing internally,
Yeah.
but doing something completely different externally.
Exactly. And that can lead to, you know, disengagement, cynicism, even resentment among employees.
Absolutely.
It can also make it harder to attract and retain top talent,
Yes.
especially, you know, younger generations who are more attuned to issues of authenticity and social responsibility.
For sure. So it's not just about managing external perceptions.
Right.
It's about ensuring that your influencer marketing strategy aligns with your internal values and culture.
Okay. And how do companies make sure that happens?
That requires open communication,
Okay.
internal transparency, and a willingness to listen to employee feedback and concerns.
It sounds like navigating the world of finfluencers is a complex and multifaceted challenge for companies.
It is.
It's not just about like slapping a disclaimer on a sponsored post and calling it a day.
Right. It's about making strategic decisions that align with your brand values, your legal obligations, and your overall business objectives.
Yeah, I like that. It's a very holistic approach.
It is. I couldn't have said it better myself. It's about taking a holistic and strategic approach that considers all of the potential implications, both internal and external.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, and I think our listeners have a much deeper understanding of the
Oh.
complexities of finfluencer marketing. But before we wrap up, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, the importance of consumer education.
Yeah.
What are some practical steps
Okay.
that companies can take to empower consumers and help them become more discerning
Okay.
when it comes to financial advice online?
That's a great question. One approach is to create educational content
Okay.
that explains the basics of personal finance, investing, and risk management
Yeah.
in a clear and engaging way. This could involve, blog posts,
Yeah.
videos, infographics, or even interactive tools
Yeah.
that help consumers understand different financial concepts and make informed decisions.
Yeah, it's like demystifying the world of finance and making it more accessible to everyone.
Exactly, regardless of their background or level of expertise.
Right. And this content shouldn't just be about promoting the company's own products or services, right?
No, it shouldn't. It should be genuinely educational and objective,
Okay.
providing consumers with the tools and knowledge they need to evaluate different options and make decisions that are in their best interests.
So it's about building trust by providing valuable information
Yeah.
that empowers consumers to make informed choices rather than just trying to sell them something.
Precisely. And another important step is to partner with credible and trustworthy sources of financial information.
Okay.
This could involve working with, nonprofit organizations,
Okay.
educational institutions, or even government agencies
Yeah.
to provide consumers with access to reliable and unbiased resources.
So it's about amplifying the voices
Yes.
of those who are committed to like financial literacy,
Exactly.
particularly consumer protection.
And finally, I think companies need to be more transparent about their relationships with influencers.
Okay.
This means clearly disclosing any financial arrangements or incentives.
Right.
And it also means being upfront about the potential biases that may exist.
So it's not just about slapping a disclaimer on a sponsored post. It's
Right.
about having an open and honest conversation about the nature of the relationship
Exactly.
and the potential conflicts of interest that may be at play.
Transparency is key to building trust and credibility.
Yeah.
And it's essential for empowering consumers to make informed decisions.
This has been incredibly insightful. We've covered so much ground
We have.
from, the allure of finfluencers
Right.
to the hidden risks, the evolving regulatory landscape, the
Yeah.
importance of consumer education.
A lot.
But before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. Knowing what you now know
Okay.
about the complexities of all of this,
Yes.
how do you think this landscape will evolve in the future? What trends do you see emerging?
That's a great question. And honestly, it's tough to predict the future, with certainty. But I think one trend we're likely to see is a greater emphasis on regulation and oversight
Okay.
of the influencer marketing industry.
So are you saying we might see like stricter guidelines or even specific laws
Yeah.
governing how these finfluencers operate?
I think it's definitely a possibility, yeah. Regulators around the world are starting to pay more attention
Uh-huh.
to this space, particularly as the lines between entertainment, education, and financial advice become increasingly blurred online.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
As more people turn to social media for like financial guidance, it's
Yeah.
natural that regulators would want to make sure that consumers are protected.
Right.
What other trends do you see emerging?
I also think we'll see a growing demand for transparency and accountability
Okay.
from both influencers and the companies
Yeah.
that partner with them.
Yeah.
Consumers are becoming more savvy and more skeptical,
Mm-hmm.
and they're demanding more authenticity and honesty
Okay.
from the people and brands they trust.
So finfluencers who are opaque about their sponsorships
Right.
or make like exaggerated claims
Yeah,
are going to find it harder to gain traction.
I think so, yeah. Consumers are starting to see through the smoke and mirrors, And they're looking for influencers who are genuine and transparent
Hmm.
and who prioritize education and empowerment over hype and self-promotion.
It sounds like authenticity is becoming the new currency of influence.
I think you're right. And I also think we'll see a shift towards more niche and specialized finfluencers.
Okay.
Instead of trying to be everything to everyone, they will focus on building a strong reputation and a loyal following within a specific area of expertise.
Yeah. Okay. So instead of just like a generic finance guru,
Right.
we might see more influencers who specialize in, say, like sustainable investing
Yeah,
or real estate or financial planning
exactly.
for a young family.
This specialization will allow them to provide more targeted and valuable advice to their audience. And it will also make it easier for companies to find influencers who are a perfect fit for their brand and target market.
It sounds like the future of influencer marketing is all about authenticity, transparency, and specialization.
I think you've summed it up perfectly, and it's going to be fascinating to see how this landscape continues to evolve in the years to come.
It certainly will be. This has been an incredibly insightful deep dive into the world of influencers. We've explored the risks, the regulations, the ethical considerations, and the potential future of this rapidly evolving industry. I think our listeners are now well equipped to navigate this complex landscape
Hopefully.
and make informed decisions about who to trust and whose advice to follow.
I hope so. And I would just add that the key takeaway here is to be an active and engaged consumer of information.
Okay.
Don't blindly follow someone just
Yeah.
because they have a lot of followers or seem successful.
Yeah.
Do your own research, ask questions, and don't be afraid to challenge the status quo.
Well said. And remember, knowledge is power. The more you know about the financial world, the better equipped you'll be to make smart decisions
Absolutely.
and achieve your financial goals.
And never stop learning. The world of finance is constantly changing, so it's important to stay curious and stay informed.
I love that. All right, that's a wrap on our deep dive into the world of finfluencers. Hopefully, you're feeling empowered to make smarter decisions both as a consumer and as a participant in the digital economy. Until next time, keep diving deeper, stay curious, and remember, don't let anyone tell you there are shortcuts to financial success. There's no substitute for knowledge, critical thinking, and a healthy dose of skepticism.